In April of 2023, I fell in the bathroom and I got what's called a traumatic brain injury. Um, it was so bad that I don't remember it happening at all. As a matter of fact, I don't remember the entire week leading up to it. That that's been erased. And I don't remember afterwards going to the hospital. I don't remember coming home. I just remember waking up at some point in the middle of the night. Um, and I couldn't even remember anybody that I knew at that moment. I was like struggling to remember anything about myself for several minutes. And then slowly, the first people that I remembered was actually nobody. I pulled out my phone and I started looking through my messages in order to start remembering people because I kind of started freaking out. Like I had no idea what was going on. My head was hurting and I knew that I couldn't remember anything. And so that's all I knew. That's all that I was comprehending is that why can't I remember anything? And so I started scrolling through my messages and the first two people were two friends of mine that I had made at the apartment complex where I live, where I stayed at. And so after that, I started to scroll more and more, and then I started to remember my family members and all that. It's kind of funny that the first people I remember wasn't even family, but that was only because they were first on the list of people. Um, and so I was staying with my parents, and I went over to their room, and this was like 4 a.m. and they weren't sleeping. And when I went in, they were like exhausted, you know. And I asked them what happened. Why can't I remember anything? And they told me that I fell and I went to the hospital. And then they told me something that still kind of haunts me. They said that I hadn't been sleeping all night and that I was coming to them every 5 minutes and asking them, and they were explaining to me over and over and over. So if you guys ever seen the movie 50 First Dates, where Drew Barrymore's Drew Barrymore's character, her memory resets every day. Well, my memory would reset like every 5 minutes, and I'd ask them what happened. They would explain it to me. Then I'd go lay back on the couch, and then 5 minutes later, I'd come back and I'd do the same. I was doing this all night. Can you imagine like what were going through that night? I mean, I can't even put myself in their shoes. But at some point, the looping stopped, and that's where my memory begins that I remember right now is that last time that I asked him that, and then slowly I started to regain memory about like where I was and who I knew, who was in my life and my friends and my family and all that kind of thing. But to this day, I never got back that week. I never got back anything about that whole day, about how I fell in the bathroom. I have no idea what happened in the bathroom. I wasn't even in the shower. Um, so I have no idea why I fell. I don't remember going to the hospital. I don't remember what they told me in the hospital. I just had the paperwork afterwards that I read later. Oh yeah, okay, I fell. But the craziest part about this whole thing is not even that. It's the fact that it completely changed my behavior for the next several months to such a massive degree that I became very aggressive and I actually ended up getting in a fight with my dad and I pushed him and I ended up going to jail for a few days. And well, this that's the mug shot. Focus. There we go. Crazy hair. Um that was the worst moment in my life. Hands down, there's nothing to compare. That was the lowest point. Because this was after I had lost my job. That's why I was at my parents', because I lost my apartment, I lost my car, and I think by that time I had already lost my cat uh, to the coyotes that live around here. So I was like, I thought I was already at rock bottom, and then this happened, and it just, I never thought that it would go further down into jail time. And the jail experience was insane. I ended up being put into a cell with another crazy guy who was actually schizophrenic. Or, I mean, I don't know officially, but that's what it seemed like to me. He was talking to people that weren't there. Um, and that dude almost killed me. I got into an argument with him, and I didn't realize how jacked he was. And I was talking so much smack. This was one of the reasons why I got in a fight with my dad, is because I was just totally unfiltered, just talking shit so bad. I mean, horrible, horrible. I didn't care about anything. Completely threw everything out the window in terms of considering other people. I think it was kind of a survival mechanism. Like, I only cared about my well being, and I was very defensive, and you can set me off like with just by giving me a wrong look. And so I got into an argument. It's basically, here. This is what happened in jail, right? I thought I was gonna have a separate video on this, but whatever. So like my second night in, we were just sitting around. You lose track of time. I didn't know if it was day or nighttime, and so the guy that brings in the food through the hatch, he came in. He gave 3 portions. There was 3 of us in the cell because it's a three layer bunk, and so he gave us food, and I went and I got it, and the guy that was that was kind of schizo, he just flipped out on me. He's like, "Why did you take the food? That was a trap, you know? He's tricking you. Like, now you're gonna owe him something or whatever." And so he just like totally went off at me, and I was like, "Hey man, why are you being disrespectful?" Because when I first came into the cell, he's like, kind of told me how it's like in the jail. He's like, "Oh, it's all about respect. If you respect others, they'll respect you." And so I was like, "I thought you said it's about respect." And so we started arguing, and I started talking smack. This guy thought he was Jesus, like legit thought he called himself Yeshua. And so I brought that up, and I started laughing at him. And now I wouldn't do that now in my right mind, but bear in mind at that time, the reason why I was even in jail is because I was a totally different person. I mean, I had lost my mind, like for real. And so I started making fun of him and laughing at him. And then I did some other things that I'm not gonna talk about. And he got angry. And I mean, I crossed the line. I violated this man, and he got angry, and he pulled me off my bed uh, by my ankle, and he's like, "If you say another word, I'm gonna kill you." And I actually believed him, and I was like, "Oh." This one I had like a little moment of clarity, like, "Oh, this dude is actually crazy, and he might actually kill me in here." And so I didn't say anything, and then he let me go. I went back into bed, and we were both laying in bed, and then he kept on like expressing how what I did was disrespectful because I had done something to him out of anger that I'm not going to talk about here. And then like 10 minutes later the police came and took him, but like, dude, you know what? They had a camera in there, and I bet they were watching, and they didn't do anything when he tried to kill me. So that was kind of BS. But yeah, like 10 minutes went by and police came and they relocated him. But so that was my jail story. There's a bunch of other stories I have from jail, but maybe I'll tell another time. It was a wild experience. San Diego City Jail in downtown is a dirty, horrible, apocalyptic place where there's trash everywhere in the hallways. Like, I don't understand why there's trash everywhere. Um, but yeah, after that, I went to live with my brother in the city, and I stayed with him for a couple of weeks. um, you know, my parents just they were just concerned that I was gonna like pop off and do some violent things, um, which I understand that concern because I was talking a lot of smack, and I did push my dad. So no hard feelings on that. We later talked about it and we reconciled and all that sort of thing. And I talked smack to some of my other family members as well that I had to talk to them about it. But as the weeks went by, I began to come back to myself, and I started realizing, like, oh my god, like all the things that I've done and said to people. And so, um, it like we're good now because of we've talked about it. I think they realized that like I just changed because I got a head injury, and then they saw that I was coming back to myself, and so it ended up working out with my family. But I will say that this was in April of 23, and like I don't think I'm the same that I was before the fall, even to this day. I don't think that I fully came back to myself. And part of the reason why I'm making this video is to give an explanation, because a lot of people in the comments of my videos are asking me like what's wrong with me. And so I think that people are noticing that my behavior has changed. And so I just want to explain why it has changed, because I realized that I'm different. If you look at my videos before April 2023 and then after, there's a massive difference. Oh my god, I posted some cringy stuff, and I privated some of the really bad stuff, but some of the cringy stuff is still there because I realize it's part of what happened to me. So I'm not gonna try to hide it. Like whatever. It's something that happens. Sometimes people fall and then they have a total change in personality. So the good thing is for me it was mostly temporary. There is something different about me now, in that it's hard to explain, but it's kind of subtle, maybe in some ways, and in other ways it's not subtle. I definitely kind of don't care as much about what people think. Like some of that has stayed, and not in a malicious way, but I think it was a self-preservation kind of thing where I couldn't afford to care what other people said because I had to take care of myself, and some of that still remained. And so that I would say, if I'm going to be totally optimistic, then that was one good thing that came out of this, is that I lost some of my fear of what people have to say about me. Not totally, I still care, but the fear is gone of like, oh, what are people going to think? What are people going to say? And so I'm kind of allowing myself to behave how I want rather than how I think other people want me to behave. the that's a good thing, but there's a limit to that, and so after I fell, I didn't have that limit. I just did literally anything that popped into my head, and so that's the part that that I've recovered, if that makes sense. So I don't totally just do whatever pops into my head anymore. Like, as my brain healed, the ability for me to control myself has come back more and more. um So yeah, that's a little part of that story. It's still kind of hard to talk about because there's a lot of heavy emotions that go into remembering all that stuff. I mean, it was the most massive event that happened in my life, the most pivotal, the biggest event that changed the direction of my life. I'm still recovering from that. Like I still have a hard time processing things. You know, if you look at the brain as a computer, there's a processor that processes information, and it hasn't been the same since. It's slower, and especially when it comes to emotions and when it comes to psychological stuff, it's harder for me to process emotions, especially negative ones. So like I can still be set off, but it's just not nearly how it was before. Now I'm smart about it because I don't want to go back to jail. So I avoid, like when I see people arguing, I just go away. I don't engage in conversations that I know will piss me off and stuff like that. So there's some good things that I'm learning how to deal with negative emotions because I'm forced to learn. And so that's kind of a good thing. But yeah, it's been really weird. I have to learn how to make money in a different way now. I This is the main reason why I'm not going back to trucking, because no freaking way in hell, no way that I can handle the stress of trucking right now. I mean, are you kidding me, dude? Like, I'm afraid to drive a regular car. I'm afraid to get behind the wheel. When I go driving with somebody and I'm on the passenger wheel, it terrifies me. Like on the freeway, it's way too fast for me. My brain is slower than how fast people are going. And so it's like I'm just sitting there like, whoa, shit, how fast are you going? So yeah, I still don't drive. That's why I do a lot of hiking, because I still want to go out into the world. I like adventure. I'm not a homebody. I don't like to sit around and watch movies all day. But yeah, I don't drive right now, so I walk around a lot. But yeah, that's the explanation for why some of you may have noticed that I behave a little differently. My content has changed dramatically. I mean, a part of that is because I'm no longer a trucker, so it's like, well, I can't make trucking videos anymore. But even the topics I'm talking about, like politics and religion, is something I never would have dared talk about in my trucking days. So that's part of the change, is that I want to talk about these things. I don't care what people in the comments say. I wouldn't have done that before, and maybe I'm making jokes that are more cringy. Overall, I think I'm pretty cringy these days, um, and I think that's okay. I'm letting myself go through that process, because what am I gonna do about it? Like this is just my reality right now. Maybe I will evolve in the future, but I actually kind of like this new version of myself. I'm learning to appreciate it for the benefits of it. There's definitely some downsides, but I'm learning to appreciate some of the things that are more fun about this more kind of chaotic side of my personality coming out. A little more impulsive, a little more aggressive, a little more, I would say, full of life. Well, let's just label it that way. Definitely not boring. So yeah. Hey, I'd be interested to hear from anybody who has had traumatic brain injuries, especially with a change in personality afterwards. Because I later on I ended up Googling this stuff, and it actually happens sometimes to people who injure their head, the the change in personality. So do let me know if you have a story like that, because it's really difficult to relate to people who haven't had this. It's really hard for me to explain why I behave differently uh to everybody, to my family. Like now they get it, but at first it was really hard, like to explain, like what's going on. So because on the one hand I seem normal, but on the other hand I seem totally crazy. It's like, what the hell is going on? So yeah, it'd be nice to hear some some stories from people who have experienced this. Uh, you know. So yeah. Anyway, thanks for listening. Hope you guys have a good day, and please watch your step, because I fell on straight ground, not even walking. Okay? So be careful in the bathroom. Cheers.